Welcome to A Christian Reacts. I do things a little bit differently on this channel. I do react, but I also bring biblical commentary that is pretty close to the Warhammer 40k lore that is on the screen. I also do a Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible series, in short format and in long format. I will be doing the long format on the weekends from now on. Alright, let's go ahead and get this started. So we're going to be reacting to WesHammer's A Name We Can't Explain Keeps Appearing Everywhere. Alright.
It's finally spooky season, and you know what that means. It's a perfect opportunity to talk about some creepy, unsolved mysteries from the grimdark future.
I'm a little late on this one. Also, I do want to say, any lore that you hear in this, or any biblical stuff, always get the answers for yourself. I've heard that WesHammer can be wrong on a lot of lore. So, again, get the information yourself, right? Because I'm learning this too, right? So, anyways.
Of Warhammer 40k, from a mysterious word that appears again and again in almost all of the 40k horror novels, taking on a different meaning with every subsequent manifestation. To this day, no one within universe or without has been able to figure out what it means. To an AI that went absolutely insane after it was force-fed tens of thousands of the
Get that silica animus out of here.
people it had been sworn to protect, and has now been left alone to linger in its madness, potentially creating a new race of abominations that the galaxy is unprepared for. And finally, a seemingly innocuous sept world that may be harboring.
Were those the rattling there? Huh. They look kind of short. Anyways,
a
not
dark
there, but
secret.
anyways.
Well, in this video, we're going to be diving into all these creepy mysteries and more, as we have a lot to talk about. But before we dive headfirst into the grimdark, a quick shout out to this video's sponsor. If you've never heard of it, War Thunder is the most... Who or what is Vulgast? There's something not quite right about all of the stories in the Warhammer 40k horror line. And that's not just the fact that by design, they're creepy, spooky, and relentlessly bleak. There's something else going on here. At first glance, each of these tales, whether they take the form of a full-length novel, audio drama, or one of many short stories within an anthology, they all appear to be entirely self-contained.
By the way, I am in an audio drama, a Warhammer 40k fan project. It's called the Valkyrie Down Project. So if you want to check that out, episode 3 was just on there. The YouTube channel is Valkyrie Down Project. So go please check that out. You know, it's basically with just a bunch of YouTubers, you know. So, anyways.
One-off tales of terror with no interconnective tissue. But when you linger a bit too long and start to read between the lines, that illusion begins to crack, and
if a moon comes to eat us, man. That was disappointing. Dead Space, man, was disappointing at the end. Dead Space 3 was terrible, but anyways.
Pattern emerges etched across the ligaments and sinew of each of these dark tomes. Within each of these books, a single mysterious word has been hidden away and allowed to fester. A word that sends chills up the spine of all who hear it, and to this day has yet to be explained. I speak, of course, of Vulgast. As of the time of this recording, Vulgast has remained quarantined within the Warhammer 40k horror line from Black Library, and has yet to appear anywhere else in the broader 40k mythos. To date, it has been documented in 23 separate stories, appearing more than 60 times. What the word means, or conversely, who or what Vulgast truly is, has proven incredibly difficult to pin down, because every time it manifests, it takes on a different form. Sometimes, Vulgast appears as nothing more than an offhand mention from a passing character. Other times, it surfaces in a hallucination or is found scrawled across a wall. These manifestations rarely have any direct impact on the plot, yet they still feel deliberate, relevant to the larger mystery. At other times, however, Vulgast plays a far more central role.
Definitely starting to sound like Dead Space. Uh-oh.
The name is often used to describe a character, place, entity, or even an organization that anchors the entire story. For example, in the novel The House of Night and Chain, which is a traditional haunted house story following a retired guardsman returning to his childhood home to confront its dark past, Vulgast is the name of the hive city where the story takes place. In the short story Terminus, Vulgast is the heart of a local legend, a mythical realm of riches said to be accessible only by those brave enough, or foolish enough, to board an equally mysterious ghost train. In the Summons of Shadow, Vulgast is described as a region of space scarred by catastrophe, where thousands perished when a starship inexplicably...
So, I do kind of want to... This is interesting here. So this is Jeremiah 20:34. So then said Jeremiah unto him, The Lord hath not called thy name Pashur, but Magar Mishabab, or Mishabib. For thus saith the Lord, so this is what it means. Terror on every side is what his name means. So behold, I will make thee a terror to thyself, and to all thy friends, and they shall fall by the sword of their enemies, and thine eyes shall behold it. Interesting there. Anyways.
Self-destructed. In the novel Sepulchrum, Vulgast is the name of a chaos machine cult. Meanwhile, in the short story Ghost Planet, Vulgast is spoken of in old Voidfarer tales as a planet of the dead, a world where lost souls are tormented for all eternity. Their spectral wails...
Oh, I do want to bring that up. I know I bring it up a lot, but for the new people, there are undead in the Bible,
serving as a siren song that lures the living to join them. Across the Black Library horror line, Vulgast has surfaced as the name of an Astra Militarum regiment, an old playhouse, a shipping company, and even a valley full of cannibals.
Okay. Which is interesting there. The giants in the Bible, they were cannibals. And we see that in the book of Enoch. But anyways. So Job 26:5, if it'll come up here, my goodness. Okay. Dead things are formed from under the waters, in the inhabitants thereof. So there's inhabitants under the waters, and they create dead things. So there's that, and there's also the Raphaim, which literally means the undead or the animated ones or reanimated ones. And Rapha, the root word means to heal, to mend, to repair. So there you go.
Sometimes the word itself holds no immediate consequences for the characters. It simply lingers in the background, a quiet warning that something terrible is about to unfold. But other times, as in the novella The Colonel's Monograph, Vulgast is a direct harbinger of madness. Anyone who dares read the forbidden lore attributed to it is driven insane, causing them to mutilate their own eyes, ears, and tongue in a desperate attempt to escape what they've learned. So then, what exactly is Vulgast? Well, unfortunately, we don't really know, but there are a few prevalent theories out there. Some believe that Vulgast is the name of a particularly powerful demon or undocumented warp entity with a very peculiar method of tormenting its victims. Others think that it's an echo of an ancient warp event, something that ripples through space and time and refuses to be forgotten. At the moment, though, these are all just theories. We still haven't really been given any explicit insight.
You know what? I'm not going to say that. I'm sure everybody says that. It's just a game theory.
Into the true nature of Vulgast. There's also a fair number of people within the 40k lore community that believe Vulgast is nothing more than an Easter egg, a fun little inside joke shared amongst the authors, each sneaking the word into their stories for fun. But I'm not entirely convinced. I think there's far more to this mystery than some are willing to give it credit for. In fact, a little while back, I was researching a video on mandrakes, a creature that featured heavily in the Warhammer horror novel The Oubliette. Now, during that process, I reached out to the book's author, J.C. Stearns, to ask a few questions about some of the ancient history alluded to in his story. Now, cheekily, I slipped in one extra question about Vulgast. I wanted to know if this was a mystery worth digging into, or if it really was just a series of Easter eggs. He told me that it wasn't his place to reveal that information, but there absolutely was more to Vulgast than meets the eye. There was a genuine mystery here waiting to be unraveled, but I would have to piece all the clues together myself. If you know me, you know that's exactly the kind of obsessive lore archaeology that I live for. Mapping the entire mystery of Vulgast is something I've been working on in my spare time for about a year now. And
so, I want to bring this up. So this is Amos 2:9. So we know that the giants became the demons, right? Or the Nephilim themselves, which the Nephilim umbrella term means all kinds of stuff. Satyrs, minotaurs, giants, stuff like that. They're just the offspring of the angels. And Joshua 4 talks about how men started to mix one species with the other, which, by the way, the Bible does say that's returning. It's coming back, and we're starting to see that a little bit. But anyways, because it does say, here, I'll bring that up right here. In so right here. Matthew 24:37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For in those days they were days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying. That's a very key part there. This isn't just a regular human marriage, right? As we saw, the sons of God came down in Genesis 6, mated with women and stuff like that, right? And giving in marriage until the day Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And we know all this stuff, the reason why God sent the flood in Noah's day was because of the Nephilim and all that. So, anyways, there's this. Yet, so this is Amos 2:9. So these giants are still going. And yet destroyed I, the Amorite, before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars. Okay. And as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. And the Rephaim were these dead giants, this tribe of dead giants that were reanimated. So, interesting.
Hopefully that video will be ready soon. Until then, who or what Vulgast truly is, and what its existence might mean for the future of Warhammer 40k, will remain one of the grimdark future's creepiest unsolved mysteries.
Aga Bashan, he was a Rephaim. That's what the word giant that is used there, it's the word Rephaim.
The tragic tale of the Mad Core. The Imperium of Mankind has sworn to never again harness the power of artificial intelligence, or as it is more aptly called, abominable intelligence.
Terminator.
The creation of sentient machines is considered a tech
Give me your sunglasses and your clothes.
heresy of the highest order, one that if discovered, almost always carries penalty of execution. To allow the continued existence of even the simplest of these constructs is to risk the species' extinction, a mistake that humanity will never make again. But the kin of the Leagues of Votann are no longer
we're getting close to that. Anyways.
part of the human race. Now, some consider them abhumans at best, while others have gone so far as to label them full-blown Xenos, despite our common ancestry. Within kin society, abominable intelligences are not only harnessed, but live amongst them as equals. Such information is of grave concern to the Imperium and the God Emperor's Holy Inquisition. But if you know just how deep the rabbit hole goes, then you know they don't just live amongst them. Their entire society is controlled by them. This is incredibly dangerous, not only for the Leagues of Votann themselves, but for the entire galaxy, as if something was to go wrong, the
And nothing against WesHammer, guys, but let me know in the comments if this is all good so far. This is all lining up with the lore says.
consequences would be unthinkable, and as the lore of their codex suggests, something may already have. If you're unfamiliar with the Leagues of Votann and their lore, you might not know about the Ancestor Cores, also known as the Votann themselves. Each one is a massive sentient quantum computer that holds the sum total of the squat races, and by extension, all of humanity's wisdom from before the Dark Age of technology. Within their data stacks lie everything a civilization could possibly need to survive the cold, endless dark of space. We're talking weapon schematics, STCs, scientific and philosophical treatises, military strategy, survival theory, the list goes on and on. The machine minds of the Ancestor Cores are so complex, so impossibly vast, that they're said to border on the supernatural. To the kin, though, they're far more than mere supercomputers. Although the Leagues of Votann are not religious by nature, the cult of veneration that surrounds the Ancestor Cores comes incredibly close to spiritual worship. Even as the cores have slowed over the millennia, becoming much more ponderous in their nature, they still remain godlike in their ability to guide and provide for the kin. Whenever a member of their society dies, their body ends up getting returned to the core. Their memories and essence are absorbed, and they...
If you don't know, I do believe the League of Votan, they're like smaller people, dwarves and stuff like that, I do believe.
join the collective consciousness within. In many ways, what the kin do kind of mirrors what the Eldar do with their infinity circuits. It's a kind of digital afterlife, a way for the dead to live on in data and memory. For the kin, it's the closest thing they have to eternity.
That's kind of in the Bible. If you consider the image of the beast being this AI or whatever, which I do, in my opinion, it sounds like an AI to me. I'm sorry. It's able, the false prophet gives it life, it's able to speak and all this stuff like that. But there is an interesting thing. I have to remember. I can't really remember it, so I won't bring it up. There were these I can't remember if they were shamans or something else, but they were able to make these statues move, talk, and all this stuff like that, which is crazy. I can't remember their names. It might have been the Gauls, which would be the Galatians, and the Druids, but I'm not sure on that, so I'm just going to shut up about it.
It should go without saying, but every kin, be they flesh or iron kin alike, would gladly lay down their lives in defense of one of these ancestor cores. But what happens when one of the leagues is facing something on the level of total annihilation, wherein thousands, nay tens if not hundreds of thousands of them are about to be killed simultaneously and subsequently fed back into their core in rapid succession? What happens when a machine built to preserve knowledge becomes flooded, not with the wisdom of a life well lived, but with the raw, unfiltered essence of death? What happens when a godlike machine designed to think with perfect clarity is suddenly forced to dream with the emotions of millions as they died screaming? The terror of extinction, the hatred of the enemy that's come to devour you and your family, and the helplessness of watching your world die. Fear, confusion, panic, and hatred burned into digital eternity, echoing inside circuits meant only for reason and logic. Well, what if I was to tell you that such an event had in fact occurred, and the insane consciousness left in its wake was known simply as the Mad Core? The Mad Core is a Votan that once served the Imberg-Egnir Block League until they were invaded by a tendril of High Fleet Leviathan. During the attack, the kin's main objective was to protect the Ancestor Core. They helped.
So in the Bible, if you guys don't know, a Leviathan is actually a sea dragon. So Leviathan is this, not High Fleet Leviathan. Leviathan is this huge sea dragon, right? And there's many of them. There's not just one, but one of them is talked about as the Deep, is its name. Her name, I should say. That's in Ezekiel. Well, let me find that. Right here. Ezekiel 31:4. The waters made him great. The deep set him up on high with her rivers, running about as plants, and sent out her little rivers into all the trees of the field. What's interesting is there's this character named Hela in Norse mythology who has this well, Verglimmer, which has many rivers flowing from it, which is interesting. And that might be this well, or was that the fountain of youth type thing, right? But anyways.
Their ground for as long as they could, but with every passing hour, their situation became more desperate. The Tyranids' primary objective, on the other hand, was simply to harvest their biomass, i.e. eating and consuming their enemies in order to steal the information within their mind and genetic code and use those organic components to create even more tyrannic nightmares. Allowing their slain brothers and sisters to be harvested in such a way was anathema to the kin, so they protected their bodies in the way they always had, by feeding them to the Ancestor Core. As they died, their corpses were shoveled into the Ancestor Core and broken down, their memories, and some would say souls, being collected and safeguarded. Eventually, the kin could hold out no longer and were wiped out completely. the Tyranids emerged victorious and would go about.
Alright, so here's the image of the beast part. Okay. So, and he exercises all the power of the first beast, the first beast before him, causeth all the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders. So he gets this wound, and so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, which is interesting. Saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So here's something to think about. You take this, we'll just say link. The guy who makes it starts with an E, right? And then that connects you to this image of the beast. And then you get into this here. So the temple, the temple of God is us, Paul says, right? Don't you know that you are the temple of God, right? But look what it says about the beast. I have a very unique view on this. So most people think it's a physical temple, right? That's going to be built in Jerusalem, which they are trying to do. But that's not what it's talking about, in my opinion. Because the temple of God is us. Paul says that. Okay. 2 Thessalonians 2:4. Who opposeth, this is talking about the beast, opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Right? So he's going to have access to the temple. So you take this mark. He has access to that. Well, God has a mark as well, right? You'll see here. Let's go. Deuteronomy. Frontlets. Okay. Right here. So this is his commandments and doing the ways of God, right? Deuteronomy 6:8. And thou shalt bind them, or here. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them. And thou sittest in thine house when thou walkest by thy way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and thy frontlets between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the posts of thy house and thy gates. So so this is how God dwells in your temple, right? You're doing the ways of him. Well, with the image of the beast and all that, you're doing his ways, right? Following his days, right? And stuff like that, we'll just say. But anyways, that was a little too long.
Harvesting the world's biomatter before departing back into the void, leaving the ancestor core untouched. The ancestor core was left alone, filled with all of the pain it had absorbed from all those who had died defending it. This collective madness drove the Votan's machine mind insane, and the sorrowful tale of the mad core is still told amongst the surviving leagues. In the present time, it is said that the kin have forbidden any from sailing too close to the wavering beacon of the core's tortured mind. I'll be honest, when I first read this little bit of fluff back when the leagues were originally introduced to the setting, I thought it was cool, but I hadn't really thought about the implications. I hadn't really considered what made this such a great mystery, as it seemed pretty cut and dry. Sure, a lot of information was missing, but the lore tells us what the Mad Core is and what happened to it. The real creepy unsolved mystery here is what the Mad Core is currently doing and what terrible consequences its existence might have for the future of 40K. We know that the leagues have refused to go anywhere near it, let alone attempt to reclaim it, but we don't know why, and we don't know what kind of danger it
Send out the 20-foot pole.
truly represents. There are a million different ways that story could go, and none of them are good. Like,
More
think
like
about
200
it. The
foot.
kin are a clone species. They don't give birth the old-fashioned way. Their bodies are constructed within an artificial womb known as a crucible, using what are called clone skeins, basically a collection of the best genes and traits gathered over millennia. There are thousands of different clone skeins, each one cultivating into a wide array of mutations, making every produced kin perfectly suited for a specific role within their society. Most importantly,
Kin basically means this whole race of these abhumans is what they're called. They're basically, at least from what I gather, dwarves, right? And that's what they're called. They're called the kin. And I learned this when, anyways. But yeah, so if you don't know, that's what they are.
this entire process of creating new kin, the creation of literally every single member of their society, is directly done by their ancestor cores. Now, it's true that the leagues have a cloning guild that assist in the production of new kin, but we don't really know how much of a role they play in this department. As it's implied, the Votann themselves are what oversee the creation of every new individual. Now, assuming the Mad Core's crucible hasn't been damaged, what kind of monstrosities would its tortured mind produce if left to its own devices, with no safeguards in place? After consuming an entire league, it certainly isn't lacking in biological components that it would need to accomplish such a thing. It's said that the kin are nearly immune to chaos corruption due to the clone skeins, but I would imagine whatever horrors climbed out of the birthing pods on this world in particular would be a close second to something that heretical. And I know what you're thinking. Wes, if such a thing were possible, surely it would have happened already. This event probably happened hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And sure enough, they don't give us an exact date on when the Mad Core was created, but they do tell us it was a tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan that the block fought against. Leviathan first appeared in the 997th year of the 41st millennium during the Third Tyrannic War, and has resurfaced again recently in the 4th. Exact dates get kind of weird in 40K. Sometimes they claim it's still the 41st millennium, while other times it's just rolled into the 42nd, but at most, we're looking at a span of maybe 2 decades, which in the context of 40K is nothing. The leagues are probably still arguing amongst themselves about what to do about the Mad Core, and since none of them will fly anywhere near it, they have no idea what it's been doing in its isolation. Speaking as a fan of the Black Library novels, the story potential for a follow-up on the Mad Core and what it's creating in its spare time is so unbelievably juicy, and I pray to the Emperor that Games Workshop eventually expands on it in a future book. Until then though, the Mad Core and the horrors it could potentially release into the grimdark future will remain one of 40K's creepiest unsolved mysteries. Own goal in the fate of Casim. I won't blame you if you've never heard of the Tau sept world of Casim. Although it's existed in the lore for nearly 2 decades at this point, it's one of those planets that's never been given much attention from the writers, other than a brief synopsis on its history. What we do know about it is that it was one of the first planets claimed during the Tau's Third Sphere expansion. It was originally an Imperial world whose defenders had been called away to face a greater threat when the Tau arrived. Because of this, the Tau were able to take the planet with little bloodshed through the use of stealth and subterfuge. After doing so, the human population there would join the Empire and swear to serve the greater good. Those humans would be ferried off-world, taken deeper into Tau territory in order to protect them from the wrath of a vengeful Imperium that would one day return to reclaim their lost planet. But mysteriously, that never happened, and over time, Casim faded into obscurity. In the modern era, it's said that the Tau from this world are known for their luck, subtlety, and a talent for opportunistic subterfuge. But beyond that, Casim is completely unremarkable. Most of the time when its name appears in Tau-centric source material, it's just one name in a long list of worlds under their control, with little other attention being paid to it. However, there was one other place that this planet was mentioned, and it wasn't in a Tau sourcebook at all. It appeared in the codex of a far more insidious faction, the 7th edition Codex Genestealer cult. It doesn't say much here, but what it does say has raised many eyebrows in the Warhammer lore community, turning this seemingly unremarkable world into the epicenter of one of 40k's creepiest unsolved mysteries. According to the Genestealer Codex, at some point in the late 41st millennium, a lone Genestealer of High Fleet Gorgon managed to reach and infiltrate the world of Casim. Unfortunately for the Genestealer, it was discovered and captured by the planet's Earth-caste scientist before it could fully embed itself in their society and begin infecting the population. If you don't know much about how Genestealer cults are formed, I'll keep it brief. Basically, a single Genestealer shows up on a planet, goes into hiding, and then starts snatching people off the street. It will infect them with a portion of its DNA and brainwash them into thinking it's some kind of divine figure. Those new cultists will go out and bring even more people in who also become infected. Over time, they all start reproducing, giving birth to ever more generations of Genestealer cult hybrids. This goes on for decades or even centuries until the cult grows large enough to take control of the planet by force. The specimen found on Casim was taken to an underground laboratory for study, and this is where the story takes a tragic turn. You see, any other race, be it humanity, the Eldar, or even the Orcs, would have killed this alien on sight. But the Tau scientists of this world had never encountered a Genestealer before. To them, the creature was clearly intelligent, and as the greater good demands,
they will learn real soon not to let these guys fester.
Every first contact is an opportunity for diplomacy. It is a chance to fold another species into the vision of the greater good. Violence, in their mind, is a last resort. It seems that the scientists attempted an unconventional method of communication after the traditional ones failed. They observed that the creature could transfer genetic material through an ovipositor in its mouth. The infected individual would then be able to understand and speak with the Genestealer via telepathic communication. In a moment of catastrophic curiosity, they would go ahead and implant samples of this DNA into Tau volunteers. The grotesque transformations that followed were not seen as blasphemy by the Tau, but as a biological wonder. No record tells of how many subjects were infected or what precautions were taken once those volunteers returned to their normal lives. What is known is that 20 years later, a bloody schism erupted among the research divisions, escalating until the Firecast was forced to intervene.
There you go.
When the strike teams reached the laboratories, they found them completely overrun. The infection had spread beyond containment, and shortly thereafter, the entirety of the planet was engulfed in civil war. The situation got so out of hand that the Firecast were eventually told to withdraw, and Casim was placed under quarantine.
Here, I'll bring this up. Yeah, sure. Because you can see, in Genesis 6, it says that, my spirit won't, be with you guys because you guys will keep, doing these hybrids and stuff like that, and it's going to overrun you, basically. Well, this kind of adds on to that. So, verse 18. So, and their judges and rulers went to the daughters of man and took their wives by force from their husbands. So, this is Genesis 6, right? According to their choice, and the sons of man in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field, the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other, in order wherewith to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth, and it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth, all men and all animals. And the Lord said, I will blot out man that I created from the face of the earth, yea, from man to the birds, to the air, all together with cattle and beasts that are in the field, for I repent that I made them. And all men who walk in the ways of the Lord died in those days, before the Lord brought evil upon man, which he had declared. For this was from the Lord, and they should not see the evil which the Lord spoke of concerning of the sons of men. So they basically reproduced and basically took over mankind. Men were like these entities, right? And then you have this too, which is interesting with the Tau. So let me get there. So this is Enoch chapter 7. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Like I said, they're cannibals and stuff, right? And they began to sin against the birds, the beasts, and the reptiles, and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and drank the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And then you're going to see here, it says, and they became pregnant, talking about the women, right? Of this, that the sons of God came, or which are the watchers, angels, and they bare great giants whose height was 3,000 ells, which is very tall. These would be your titans and stuff like that, right? But anyways.
For 10 long years. In contrast to how the Imperium would have handled a situation like this, the planet's isolation did not end in the purifying flames of Exterminatus, but under the calm decree of an eccentric ethereal named Ongol, who declared the world productive and clean. It's been 8 real-world years since we were first introduced to this story, and as of the time of this recording, there have been no updates on Casim nor its people. Officially, it's listed as a thriving Tau sept world, prosperous, loyal, and productive under the guidance of the ethereals. But if the records we've discussed are to be believed, then that public image may be nothing more than a facade. Think about it, this series of events just doesn't make any sense. If the infection had gotten so bad the planet had to be quarantined for a decade, then retaking the world would have been a huge undertaking and would at bare minimum require some type of military campaign. Even then, rooting out the infection in its entirety would be almost impossible. It's why the Imperium doesn't bother wasting time or resources if they just nuke infected worlds that have gone too far.
That was weird.
There's also practically no information on this ethereal Ongol in the lore beyond this single mention. We don't know if they were present during the incident, if they remained behind during the quarantine, or if they were off-world and just assumed things had worked themselves out without anyone actually going to check. All we're told is that they were described as eccentric, meaning unconventional and strange in both views and behavior. That alone is noteworthy, since it's an adjective almost never used to describe one of the members of the ethereal cast. I should also point out that although it's not as common nowadays when Warhammer takes itself much more seriously, Games Workshop's older lore had a habit of giving characters names that were thinly veiled references or puns. Abaddon literally means a bad one, Sly Marbo is both an anagram of Rambo and a nod to Sylvester Stallone, the actor who played Rambo, and my favorite, Gazkul Magulak Thraka, a big green beast that stomps across the countryside smashing all the little people, was a play on Margaret Thatcher. Many fans who have looked into this obscure bit of lore believe the name Ongol follows the same tradition.
Is that true? Huh. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's funny.
A deliberate play on the phrase own goal. The implication being that this ethereal's proclamation that the world was safe, even when it clearly wasn't, was no mistake at all, but part of his own insidious agenda. The reason this is such a big deal is that what we might be looking at here is not just a Tau planet secretly overrun with Genestealer Tau hybrids hiding in plain sight, but also a member of the ethereal cast who has himself become infected, enthralled by the will of the Great Devourer. Whether he was infected to begin with here on Casim or elsewhere in the Empire, we can only speculate at. I've talked about the Genestealer cults before, usually in the context of how dangerous they are within the Imperium. One cultist puppet elevated to planetary governor or naval commander can cause devastation on a massive scale. But I could never imagine that a thrall could reach even higher than that. The ethereals are, for lack of better words, the deities of the Tau, figures of absolute authority, commanding obedience and unity beyond even.
Oh, that's the mitre of Dagon. So if you guys don't know, that little mitre that the Pope wears, that's exactly the same thing that the priests of Dagon wore. Just saying. Anyways.
Even think the prime.
Because you could see the little fish mouth there. Yeah. You can go look that up yourself, by the way.
Marks or the High Lords of Terra could hope to achieve. If even one of them were compromised, the result.
Let me say this, where's that stuff in the Bible? Right? gotta wear that mitre, gotta wear this, and do that, and do this, right? If it's, for Christians, if it's not in the Bible, we should not do it. Just saying. But anyways.
Would be catastrophic. Think about it. The Tau Empire is built on conformity, hierarchy, and centralized control. Precisely the kind of structure a cult like this would exploit. With a corrupted ethereal, the infection wouldn't need to spread through rebellion. It could spread through the very ideals the Tau Empire is built upon. Through order, through unity, through the greater good itself. Now, before ending this section, I should push back on this theory a little bit. Whenever the lore community starts talking about the idea of Tau Genestealer cultists, two main counterpoints always come up, points that they believe make such a thing impossible. First, the supposed existence of Genestealer DNA-attuned scanning technology within the Empire, and second, the claim that the Kroot can detect the pheromones of infected individuals. In my research, I wasn't able to find any solid reference.
Sorry guys, I'm a little tired today, so I apologize for yawning so much.
To this scanning technology, though if you want my honest opinion, I do believe something like this probably exists. It's just not on a massive scale. It would likely require testing individuals one by one, which is wildly inefficient, and a cult wouldn't just walk blindly into that kind of screening. On top of that, Tyranids are remarkably clever and hyper-adaptable.
That's for
Even
sure.
if the Tau had such technology, there's no guarantee it would keep working for long. The Tyranids could possibly evolve around it, leading to the classic evolution versus innovation arms race that defines their relationship with the Tau. Now, when it comes to the Kroot, the pheromone thing is definitely real. It's mentioned in the 8th edition Genestealer Cult Codex, but I think people tend to overstate what this actually means. Nowhere in the lore does it say that the Kroot can detect pheromones of non-Kroot who are infected. What it says is that if a Kroot consumes an infected member of their own species, they gain the ability to detect the subtle wrongness in the pheromones of other Kroot. From what I can tell, everything about their pheromone sensitivity is self-contained, limited to their own species and closely related subspecies like Kroot hounds or Narlocks. Saying that this makes the Tau immune to Genestealer infiltration is like saying that because ants use pheromones to communicate, they must automatically understand the chemical signals of literally every other insect on the planet. I just don't think pheromones work that way. Now, to be fair, the Kroot can take on genetic traits from the species they consume, but there's nothing in the lore suggesting that that includes full pheromone analysis, and even if it did, it would require something unthinkable, the Tau ordering the Kroot to eat one of their own. Infected or not, that's a massive taboo. Even then, they'd have to bring that Kroot to a world suspected of infection and have them literally sniff out billions of citizens one by one. It should go without saying, but again, that's absurdly impractical. Further,
that would probably make someone go mad. Having to sit there and smell millions of people. Oh man, that would be a little rough, especially on the human side of things. We smell.
By the time anyone even considered doing something like this, the cult would already be massive, deeply embedded, with spies in high-ranking positions and eyes everywhere. There's no way they wouldn't know it was coming, and no way the Tau could contain it once they did. Now, what truly makes Tau society difficult for Genestealers to infiltrate isn't some piece of hidden technology or biological advantage, it's their unity. Their strict adherence to the caste system and their unshakable devotion to the ethereals. Every member of Tau society has a defined role to fill. They know their place, their purpose, and how they're expected to behave. The moment an infection begins, when even a single individual starts acting out of character, the entire structure notices and the illusion falls apart. But just because something is difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. Genestealers are remarkably intelligent and hyper-adaptable. And when you have a situation like this one, where in one of the most dramatically ironic moments in all of 40k, the Earth-cast scientist literally infected their own people just to see what would happen, then it makes the whole thing a hell of a lot easier for the Genestealer. As it stands though, all of this remains speculation. Until we've been given more information, the fate of Casim and the true nature of Own Goal will remain one of Warhammer 40k's creepiest unsolved mysteries. But what do you think of all this? Which one of these creepy mysteries was your favorite and why? Do you think Games Workshop will ever—
I think I like the mad core of a machine creating all these terrors and stuff like that. That is crazy. Because that's something that could be possible, if you look at, the image of the beast being this AI and stuff like that. It could create a bunch of stuff, let's just say, right, in your mind, and make you think someone is bad when they're just saying something against what the AI wants, But anyways, I find it fascinating.
Return to the Gene Stealer cult Tau Planet or the Mad Core and potentially all of the abominations it could end up making, or these storylines that probably are just going to end up petering out and never end up getting touched again. What about Vulgast? What are your theories on what it could possibly be? Now, personally, I'm about halfway through categorizing all of the references to Vulgast throughout all of the horror novels. Like I said in the video, that's something that I've been working on in the background just for my own personal enjoyment for the last year or so, and hopefully I'll have a video on that soon. But in the meantime, if you're somebody who's also read the horror books and you have your own personal theory, definitely let me know about it in the comment section. Again, a huge thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play it for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile by using my links in the pinned comment or the video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months or more will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and consoles, including multiple premium vehicles and other goodies. It's available only for a limited time, so make sure you don't miss out. Anyways, as always, leave your questions, comments, concerns, corrections, and ideas for future videos down in the comment section below. Big thanks to everyone who supports all the work.
Yeah, if you guys have something you want me to cover, put it down in the comments below. There's usually somebody, so.
That I do, and I will catch you all in the next one.
All right, guys, we're going to end it here. So, real quick, from the, my, not necessarily sponsors, but just things that help me out here. vidIQ, if you're becoming a YouTuber, it's a very good tool to use. If you want to look at it, try it out, use the link in the description. Also, they do, AI thumbnails and all that stuff. And they show you scores of your titles, so it can help you out a lot and give you stuff to put in, the tags and all that as well. And also, check out W Energy drinks. They're jitterless. They have many flavors. And the link is in the description. You get 10% off as well. So, if you guys liked the video, thank you. If you disliked the video, thank you for at least giving me a chance. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day.